So there is this legend, an Italian legend, of a master and his servant. Now the servant was on the slow side, maybe quite a bit on the slow side, and this just really frustrated the master. And one day, in just a fit of temper, he screamed out, "You are the stupidest man I have ever met. Here, I want you to take this staff, and I want you to give it to someone who is stupider than you." And so the servant left, and he traveled. And yet, no matter where he went, the servant could not find anyone more stupid than himself. Years passed, and he returns to his master. Now his master is much older now. His health isn't the best. He walks into the house of his master, and the first thing out of his master's mouth, even though he's old and frail, "I see you've still not found someone stupider than you to give that staff to." There was quiet. And the master said, "I'm going on a journey." The servant asked, "Well, when are you going to be back?" "It's a journey from which I will not return." The servant asked, "Well, have you made all the arrangements for this journey?" The master replies, "No, unfortunately I haven't." "Well," the servant says, "have you had enough time to make all the arrangements?" The master says, "Yes, I've had plenty of time. I've had my entire life. But I guess I got busy doing so many other things." So the servant says, "Just to be clear, you're going on a journey from which you will not return, and you have not made all the arrangements necessary, although you've had plenty of time." "Yes, I suppose that's true." And the servant said, "Here, take this staff. I finally found someone stupider than me." That little fable, I think, reflects the way many people treat death. It's just, if you notice, death isn't something we talk about. It's not something we even think about. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind. We don't often think about the effects that death can have on us if it's a loved one, or how our death is going to affect our loved ones. It's just not something we have. I mean, even, making out a will, it's just, we don't even like doing that because it's just not a topic we go to. So, since we don't really talk about it, no thought really is given how to prepare for death. And finally, when we do think about it, it's usually when we're in a room like this one, when we're sitting in the pews, maybe when we're sitting in a funeral chapel, and all of a sudden, as we sit here, all the despair, the hopelessness, the grief kind of washes over us, fills us, because we never dealt with it before. Now, it's interesting that while all that is true, and I think it's true for Christians as well, that everyone wants to know what happens after death. We don't want to deal with death, but we kind of would like to know what happens after death. You could be stone cold unbeliever. You could be the most faithful person, but we want to know what happens to us. We hear those fantastical stories of, after death, near-death experiences. What happens in a near-death experience anyway? Is it just that our bodies are shutting down, and it's just something that everyone experiences, this going to the light? I don't know. I mean, your guess is going to be as good as anybody else's guess. But behind all this interest of death is this deep down feeling that there's got to be something more than just this. There's got to be more. There's got to be more than just 70 or a few more if you're so blessed. There's got to be a purpose. Now, some have grasped onto this idea, it's become very popular, that we'll come back again, right? And our soul is given to another living creature, and our soul will go on living again and again and again, hopefully ascending up into higher creatures all the time. Reincarnation. Others say, and I think this is where most people in American society are at, we're kind of born with this immortal soul, and when we die, that soul leaves us and goes to a better place where it lives happily ever after. Regardless of what the person believed and what kind of person they were, the immortal goodness in everyone takes them to a place of just peace and happiness. And then there are those, and maybe it's growing, those who say, when you die, that's it. When you're dead, you're dead. When you breathe out your last, that's all there is. There's going to be nothing more. Our gospel this morning. The Sadducees, they subscribe to that last one. When you're dead, you're dead. They didn't believe in the resurrection. How can you not believe in the resurrection? How do these guys, these religious men, faithful men, they're good men, honorable men, moral men, they don't believe in the resurrection? How is it possible? Because Sadducees, they clung to the first 5 books of the Bible, the books of Moses. That was where they were at, and that's where they stopped. The rest of the Old Testament, yet. It was just the first 5 books. And there's no resurrection mentioned in the first 5 books of the Bible. So, obviously, if it's not mentioned in the Bible, it's not real. They don't believe in the resurrection. Yeah, but they're smart guys, and they like having fun at other people's expense and make a little bit of money of people who actually do believe in the resurrection. And so we got this really popular guy who's going around. His name is Jesus. And so they're going to ask him a question. A question, obviously, he can't answer because there's no such thing as the resurrection of the dead. So they come up with this crazy story. It's almost embarrassing to make up a story this crazy and then actually ask someone what the answer is. The story is, a man marries a woman, and before they can have children, the man dies. Well, Jewish law says that the next brother in line must marry the woman and have children, of which one of those children will carry on the line of the dead brother. Because, we're all waiting for the Messiah to come. Everyone wants to be in the line of the Savior, so the brother fulfills this and they have children. But the second brother who marries the woman, he dies before they have children, and this woman is truly a black widow. She really is. 7 sons marry this guy. They all die before they have children. And so now, they're standing there like this. So, Carpenter of Nazareth, in the resurrection, which we don't believe in, whose wife is she going to be? Well, let's put it into a little bit of context, because while we can think, wow, the Sadducees they're really off base. I don't know. We sometimes lapse into that kind of thinking too. Many today are married more than once. I mean, some of us here have been married more than once. When you get to heaven, whose husband or wife are you going to be? And what kind of heaven is this actually going to be, where all these relationships in this world, all tangled up, get all tangled up in heaven? In heaven, which ex-spouse are you going to be sitting at the table for a supper that never ends? What kind of heaven is this? And I think those are valid questions to ask. Now, the Sadducees, they're very smugly, with a smirk on their face, asking the carpenter of Nazareth, so, whose spouse is she? Well, Jesus has two answers. First, Jesus says that in this life, men and women marry. But those who are worthy to rise from the dead and rise to everlasting life, those who believe, right, will not marry. So up there's no marriage. Instead, Jesus says, in heaven we're all going to be changed. We're going to be like the angels. The angels never die. We're never going to die. That means our bodies are going to be different than they are now. We're going to have a heavenly body, whatever that is. We don't really know. We're not going to go on this never-ending merry-go-round of reincarnation. We're not going to just disappear into nothingness. God has prepared for us an eternal destination. And the point that Jesus is trying to make here is that you can't take what we experience in this life and somehow project it onto life eternal in heaven. You can't do that. Heaven is way beyond anything that we've experienced. And as much as we like to think that there are those things in this world that we really enjoy and we can't wait to get to heaven because we want to enjoy them there too, Jesus is saying, heaven is just way beyond what we could possibly comprehend. It is totally different. It is wonderful. It defies description. We use words to describe heaven, words that we have here, images that we have here, to describe heavenly things that are beyond words and descriptions. And then Jesus comes to the second reason that I've already kind of mentioned. He refers to the books of Moses, because remember, they only have the first 5 books of Moses. That's all they believe in, that's all they study, that's all they memorize. And he says to them in Exodus chapter 3, he says, Moses clearly proves that the dead are raised to life. In the passage about the burning book, he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. He is the God of the living, not of the dead. For to him all are alive. And God is not saying that he was the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as if they're gone, out of sight. Instead, I am. He is. At this very moment in time, he is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He is the living God. He is the resurrection and the life. Now, there are a lot of things that we don't know about life after death and how the resurrection will happen and when it's going to happen. But we do know this. We do know that it's going to happen, and we know who's going to be at the center of the resurrection, even though it's all a little bit unclear right now. In 1 Corinthians, this is the wonderful chapter we read every Easter, but in 1 Corinthians, Paul uses the picture of a seed. When you look at a seed, it's dead. There's nothing there. You could put it on the counter and leave it on the counter, and it'll sit there for 100 years, and nothing's going to happen to the seed. But, you put it into the ground, and, the gentle spring rains come, and the sun warms up the earth, and what happens? Bam, miraculously, it sprouts forth. And so it's going to be with our bodies, too. One day, some loving hands are going to tenderly put our lifeless bodies into the grave, there to await the miracle of the resurrection. And we're going to spring up as God's plants. We're going to be the same, and yet we're going to be different. We're going to be glorified. We're going to be immortal. We are going to be prepared to enjoy God's presence forever. See, all trouble, all doubt, all worry, All fears will just be gone. We're going to be like the angels. We will live forever by the hand of the living God. We are raised to the joy and the peace that is beyond description. That is awaiting us. That is what the Bible has promised us. That is why we are here. That's why we believe in Christ. At this moment, right here and right now, we see dimly. It's like looking through a frosted window. But a time is coming when you and I, we're going to see with absolute clarity. We're waiting for that day. Thanks be to God. Amen.